Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 4 of my Best Buddy series, and in this video we're going to work on more details on the little girl, and we're also going to add fur to the lion toy. If you're following along with acrylics or oils, check out part 1 of this series where I have a list of all the canvas and the paint and the brushes that I use. The app we're going to be using is ArtRage for Android. And we're going to go ahead and continue working a little bit more on the shadows on the back of the little girl's neck and adding a little bit more of the hair to the ponytail. And again, I have my multi-windows app open on my Samsung tablet, and I just wanted to use that photo reference because the ones in ArtRage don't quite get as big as I needed to see the details on the back of the little girl's neck. And so here I'm just kind of adding more hair to her face here, and like I said in my last video, part of what makes it so cute is that her hair is coming out of her ponytail, and it makes it look like it's falling in front of her face, and so that gives it a really cute look. So I wanted to capture that in this painting. And here I'm just kind of working on the shape of her elbow, and by adjusting the shape of her shirt, I want to add more definition to the wrinkles on her shirt. And so I'm adding a dark red color, probably alizarin crimson would work fine if you're following along traditionally. And then use some cad red light. If you want to add the highlights, maybe throw in some orange to the cadmium red light, and that will just give highlights to the wrinkles. And so I'm just using the round brush in ArtRage, and also the dry clump brush will work well for this too. And if you're following along traditionally, your number 3 round will work pretty good for this. We just kind of want a detail brush here. And so I'm just kind of working on trying to get the right shape of her arm here and the elbows, and I'm adding some almost yellow to the edge of her elbow there, just to kind of add the highlight. And then I'm adding a darker flesh color on the other side because it'll be more in the shadows here. And you can use your phthalo yellow green and mix it with alizarin crimson, and that will make kind of a darker brown color. You can even add in the burnt sienna if you're using your acrylics. And we just kind of want to get sort of the shape of her elbow and her hand and the fingers and sort of on the wrist there. Then for the little girl's foot, you also want kind of a darker flesh mixture as well. So you would just go ahead and use that shadow color that you used for her arm and put that on her foot, and then outline the toes with maybe a burnt umber or a burnt sienna color. And because her foot's going to be in the shadow, it'll be underneath the lion, and so the flesh won't look quite as bright. And then here I'm just kind of adjusting the shape of her toes a little bit better, trying to get the shape of her foot. Not much of her foot is going to show, but a little bit of it shows enough to show that she's barefoot and walking in the grass. And then I'm just kind of working a little bit more on the hand a little bit, trying to get it correct with the shape. And I'm using another photo that I have that's darker so that I can see the shape of her fingers a little bit better. Sometimes I'll take reference photos, and these are all from Pixabay, by the way, where you can get free references to use for your paintings. But sometimes I will take a photo and really blow out the exposure so that I can see details that might be hidden in the shadows. And then I may want to go back and see if I can't see the darker details on it. And that's kind of what I'm doing here, because I want to see how her knuckles look and how her thumb looks, and just kind of try to show that she's holding a handful of the fur to carry her big toy with. And then I'm merging the layers again because I like to work with just a few layers as possible, plus it helps on the performance of your tablet if you don't have too many layers, especially with ArtRage. And then here I want to start on the fur of the lion, and so I'm using the dry clumps brush because it runs out of paint and gives it a realistic sort of dry brush look. And if you're following along traditionally, you want to just go ahead and use your number 3 round and don't put a lot of paint on it, and just use really short choppy strokes, and this kind of gives the texture of the fur that's on the toy. And I'm just putting a little bit of shadow behind her hand, and we're using a little bit of purple and some brown to make the shadow on it, and just kind of try to blend it in and just make a kind of a rough fur texture, but we want to change the color of it and make it look a little bit darker. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm trying to blend it out just right, and I kept getting too much of the blend on it and making it blend out too much. So you have to adjust the size of your brushes with your blending brushes too, and a small frost brush would probably work pretty well for blending the fur. You just kind of want a rough texture look. And then here I'm adding some more light fur because this is where the light is going to be hitting, and it's going to make it look like there's light coming through the branches of the trees here, and it's hitting on the lion right there on that part. So you want to use a lighter yellow color. Probably just take yellow ochre, maybe mix some burnt sienna with it, and throw in some white acrylic gesso if you're using your acrylics. And then for the shadowed part, we want kind of a darker brown color, and so you can use burnt umber, maybe throw in a little bit of yellow ochre to make it not quite as dark, and use the same short choppy strokes for this, because we still want to get that fur texture. And also don't cover up all the original underpainting either. We want sort of that medium tone that the lion has to show up through some of the lighter colors, and that just kind of gives the impression of fur and looks like a really soft plush toy, and that's what we're trying to show there. And then here I'm just kind of working on the tree and making the tree look a little bit better right there and covering up some of the white. And then I'm working on the muzzle of the lion and on the paws, just adding a little bit more white and adjusting the shape. And here you're going to see his foot pad, so you want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'd use the lighter color of that mixture that we've been using for the lion's fur. And also keep the edges of it soft, because this is a plush toy and we want to go ahead and make sure that we keep the edges of it really soft. And then you can kind of add a little bit of a highlight on this foot and draw in sort of the individual toes here, and just kind of make the shape of his foot become more refined here. And you can add a little bit of the dark brown mixture that we've been using to show the toes and his foot pad, and add a little bit of that on his legs there just to show the shadow. And you might add another tone right here that's not quite as dark as the shadow, but not as light as our main underpainting tone. And so I'm just kind of mixing that with some really lights and some real dark colors. And remember to just keep it a really short, dragged stroke, because we're trying to get the fur texture here. And because this part's more in shadow of the lion, it's going to be a little bit darker. So I'm just using the darker colors here. and along the edge, because that part's going to be in shadow, and under his face, and that will also define his head right there. And just going back and forth and smudging it and putting a stroke down and smudging it again, but not smudging the stroke completely out. And that just helps to give it the texture of a really soft, fuzzy toy. And you can do this traditionally by just adding a stroke and smudging it with your finger or a paper towel. But you don't want a hard edge for this toy, because this toy is a plushie. So you want to show that in your painting, and you want to try to convey that. So you just want to keep real soft edges everywhere on this lion toy. And so I'm merging the layers once again so that they won't get too many of them. And then I'm starting a new layer to try to work some more on the lion. And then I'm right here using a darker brown to define his face. And so, like I said, you can use burnt umber again for this shadow color. And then I want to make individual strands on the mane here, and we need some shadow color right here on the bottom side, because he's going to be in shadow right there. And then on the top we'll want a lighter color. But right now I'm using individual strokes, and you can probably use your short script brush if you're following along traditionally for that. We want a mane-like look, and in the photo reference the lion is just a really light yellow color, but I wanted to give him different colors because he kind of would just look like a big yellow blob. So we want to give him different colors and just kind of different tones of yellows and browns there, and that will just make him show up better in the painting. And so here I'm adding a little bit more shape to the muzzle by using a darker brown again. And then I'm working a little bit on smudging out the edges, because we don't want those hard edges on this soft toy. So this is the end of part 4 of my Best Buddy series. And in part 5 we're going to work a little bit more on the lion, and we're also going to work more on the foreground grass and add more detail to it. So if you're interested in seeing the next part, hit that subscribe button. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.